The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Brian for Breaking Down Security. Part 2 of our discussion this week with Mieng Lim from Digital Defense by HelpSystems on ransomware, what to do before, during, and after. This is part 2 of our discussion, but we actually did nearly 2 hours of audio with Mieng on what to do for ransomware. We actually got into some additional discussions. This is, I would say, the last part of our discussion. We did about 30 minutes of additional audio with Mieng on talking about how certain companies reacted. In this case, recently, there was the issue with Okta and how they handled communications during and before the incident was actually managed. We found out in more recent times that not only did Okta, it was pretty much agreed upon that Okta did not handle communications well, but as I mentioned during and had heard during a recent Risky Business podcast that Brett Winifred was interviewed on from Okta, they didn't get very good comms themselves from their own third party. So it kind of perpetuated the issue. It was like Okta didn't have comms because they didn't really, they couldn't come to press or talk to the press about what was going on because they themselves were either not given all of the information or there were definitely some issues there. So something to think about when you're dealing with your own incident response and you're having to deal with information from third parties who they themselves may not know everything themselves, or they're not necessarily willing to give you all that information. So it's just something to think about. If you are interested in listening to the entire interview with Mieng, you can subscribe to our Twitch. A subscription at a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 will give you an hour and a half of audio and video where you can hear and see and listen to us talk. And I think we actually had some comments and questions from our other Twitch subscribers. Or I'm going to put it up on our Patreon. So if you are at least the $5 level, you'll have access to that from a Patreon level. What I'd like to do is try to give our Patreon supporters and our Twitch supporters some value, something back, trying to give back to our many years, some of our Patreon supporters, to get value from that, not just, having Slack access or custom Discord channels, but if you're an audio podcast listener, you're going to get some of the audio. If you're a Patreon supporter or a subscriber to our Twitch, you'll get the full audio. So just trying to give back to that and to give some additional value for that. So hope you got that. So we also talk a little bit about insurance and liability here, where a lot of companies are like, we got insurance, it's great. A lot of insurance companies are tired of having to foot the bill for companies that are negligent or do not do the due diligence or due care. So we talked to Mieng a little bit about that as well. Hope you have a great week. I'll be back at the end of this with the content to figure out how to contact us if you are interested in doing so. So hope you have a great week, and we'll talk soon. Go ahead.
If we can, this would be kind of the second stage in terms of actions to be taken during a ransomware event, right? Very much the logging, triggered an incident response.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things that, an organization, the actions that should be taken during an incident, containment, right? We want to make sure that if it's ransomware, limiting its access to before it can laterally spread throughout the network, segmenting that area and limiting its access. So access control here, segmentation, micro segmentation is so important, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that forensics can be conducted after the fact too. So one of the things that a lot of too many want to do is reboot the device, and that's probably the worst thing that you can do. We typically recommend that to limit and contain, to disconnect it from the network, but allow the device to stay online, because otherwise there could be forensic elements that can be lost on that reboot. And then, the big question always is, do you pay that ransom? And that question really is so dependent on the organization, and whether they have planned for an incident like this with the proper backups and what have you. In some cases, it makes sense to. You hate to like I said earlier, perpetuate the ransom, but to pay it might be the only way that you get your data back if you don't have the proper backups and controls in place. And in the cases where you can, obviously, restore those devices once you've done the forensics and once you've completed, contained, and understand, the spread of that particular piece of ransomware. The other piece too is that there's a continued effort that a lot of organizations may not consider in the event of an incident, is the continued monitoring that's required of any data that might have been encrypted, to ensure that it doesn't get leaked or disclosed. So monitoring the web, the dark web, media, etc., the paste bins for this type of data is something that has to happen, even post-event, to ensure that the data remains secured.
Right. So we've talked about. I wanted to talk about some of this prevention and the defense. I mean, during this. So when you've been ransomwared, is it important? How important is it to figure out where you've been ransomwared in terms of where the infection is? If it's in an endpoint or like a developer laptop, should you just isolate that laptop as soon as you can? Because you've got discussions here about protecting the endpoint, but it feels like sometimes you just need to, okay, yeah, you were ransomware. We're going to knock you off the network because your continued presence on this network constitutes a bigger issue than, some developer not being able to do something.
Absolutely.
Is this part of the incident response? It's like, where you should be doing tabletops where it's like, we've noticed some activity on a developer's laptop. Okay, we're going to isolate them immediately, or we're going to remove them from the network, or we're going to kill their credentials. Should you do all of those things, or does it really depend on
all of those things?
Okay.
All of those things and more.
All right.
All of those things and more.
Okay, because I was thinking, in terms of containment and being able to, like you said, if you power off the box or remove them from the network, you may lose forensic information. So, it would, that makes sense.
This is where those incident response kind of disaster recovery type of tabletop exercises is very beneficial, because if you find that, like you mentioned, in your example, where the infection, if you will, is in a developer lab, in a developer machine, and it's limited to that one machine, very likely removing that machine and limiting that individual's credentials across the rest of the network will be enough to contain the infection, right? But too often, the initial point of ransom isn't identifiable immediately. And so this is where, when organizations are talking about zero trust, that concept of micro-segmentation really comes into play. If you have the means to do this, and micro-segmentation, you don't have to be implementing zero trust to micro-segment, right? It's a standard principle of least privilege, right? That zero trust really is. So, take that kind of mindset into segmenting of the network. And that will be an inexpensive, if you will, means to start containment. So in that tabletop exercise, you want to run scenarios and simulations where different segments of the network are identified as infected. And the infection continues to propagate across the network. How do I where are my firewalls at? Where can I
Right.
break the connections? So maybe it's one device, maybe it's 15 devices, maybe it's an entire location. How do I contain that in those scenarios, in those different types of situations? So understanding different mechanisms in order to do that, and where your breaks are is very important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's, yeah, topologies is going to either make or break you. So having a completely flat network, like I saw a tweet the other day from, I think it was a university in Kansas or something, but the tweet basically said, "We've been owned, shut all the things down. We'll let you know later on." And I was like, "Oh, wow." The first thing I thought of was, well, I guess that's one way of communicating with people. But my second one was like, what happens if somebody didn't actually think this through before they shot that tweet out to, world plus dog? And oh, my bad, it wasn't really a vulnerability, or you're announcing that you've been breached via Twitter. And But yeah, it was an interesting way of announcing that they had been breached or ransomwared. And I wondered about who was responding to that. So let's
I
let's
wonder
let's
if
talk.
that
Go ahead.
I wonder if that complies with the state's notification breach notification laws.
I Yeah, that's true. I mean, somebody really wanted to be, letting people know that they'd been completely
Oh
upended.
my gosh.
Yeah, I worry about that, because those are communications you really have to kind of massage. I think you can't just let whoever, whoever's got access to 180 characters or whatever it is now for Twitter, that you're dropping that information out there. So um,
Right.
kind of put you on the back foot there. So all right, so I think that's part of the thing we also need to talk about with ransomware and incident response, is the response part. Not just sharing that information with your customers and your board and who else, but how important is it to have folks like your PR and your marketing? And I believe, who was that who mentioned that the other day? I think it was somebody had mentioned having your technical account managers, if you've got them, or the people who are interfacing with your customers, because in truth, you want to communicate with your customers first. You don't want to necessarily put it
Absolutely.
out to world plus dog. And please go ahead and
Yeah.
elaborate.
Yes. So part of that incident response plan absolutely has to be a well-defined workflow, if you will, of communications, right? Who is communicating to whom and when during the process. Um, Not only are you required to notify, government entities, and I think all but maybe 2 states these days. I know the last time I checked, I think there were still 2 states that were holding out, but they may have come in underneath that notification, statewide notification requirement. So those entities, but you definitely want to communicate to your customers, and you want to present a united front, if in a positive message of,
Right.
we've got this under control, we've got this contained, especially if you hold or transmit any sensitive data on behalf of your customers.
Right.
Because the last thing you want is, if you communicate poorly, you might just have lost your entire customer base. One of the biggest losses during an event of any type of compromise, is really that trust, that element of trust. I'm trusting you as my vendor that you're securing, securely transacting with me. And when that trust is breached, that is probably one of the hardest um, values to retain, and to calculate the cost of. How much trust have I lost with my customers, and how much that trust is going to impact whether they potentially renew with me or not. So having a plan in place for whom will speak to the event when that communication happens, making sure that those that are communicating with the public or with customers has the consistent information to share, is very important, because you want to make sure that the organization is presenting a very unified, positive, constructive approach and communication, so that you can, as much as you possibly can, retain that trust, that all the right actions are being taken despite this event happening.
Right. Yeah, I think, and I hate using the word controlling the narrative, but being able to explain to your customers, who are the people who are going to continue, hopefully paying you money to do this, and communicating with them first before it ends up on Tech Dirt or the Reg or something like that, where they're going to find out from the filter of the reporter or the slant of the reporting in this case. And then that just breeds whatever goes on in drama in Twitter land, where the initial reports of the Okta breach, for instance, was that Okta was completely owned up. Half of the world uses Okta in some way, shape, or form, so that was super super duper bad. um, and I don't know how they communicated with their third party or with their customers. I'm assuming they did, but being able to explain to your customers before it goes public that something bad happened. It could be your customers telling people after the fact, but being able to give them that initial response seems to be the best way of doing it. And you don't want your customers finding out, like I said, via Wall Street Journal or whoever. So yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's
And
important to
keeping, and,
pull. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say there are some organizations that opt to timeliness is also key here as well.
Right.
And having that plan in place helps to keep that timeliness. Some organizations have chosen to stay mum too long. And like you mentioned, the news entities pick it up and take their spin on it. And there's actually more damage control that the communication then has to evoke as a result of that. So being timely about it, even if the initial statement doesn't contain a lot of information, being very timely in notification at least shows that you're aware of the event and actions are being taken. More information is going to be shared shortly. Keep posted here for updates, et cetera, whatever that might be, rather than waiting for other entities to post and release the news on it.
Right. Right. So I'd like to, anybody have any other questions inside of our stream here? I think we've talked with Ming I don't think I have much else. Let me go over here and look at our show notes here. We had some other links in here to, some other, statistics. There was some good information there. Several links about truth of ransomware. The ransomware infographic was quite good. That was quite nice. So let me make sure we don't have anybody else. Yeah. So we had you on it, and we appreciate your time to be able to come on a Sunday evening of Mother's Day. I do apologize for that. It did not register today was Mother's Day, even though I woke up and I was like, oh, I need to call my own mother. And my wife, of course, the mother of my child, is in Hyderabad, India right now, so it's technically Monday for her. But thank you for coming and joining us. So tell me what digital defense by Help Systems does. I did promise Ming that we would, give her the chance to tell people what it is they do. And I think at the bottom of this said help from an ally. So when you're going through an incident response or ransomware attack, obviously being able to call in, additional help because your team is going to be, running with their hair on fire. So sometimes it might be good to bring in a third party who can help with the incident response side, or, bringing in staff augmentation to handle the IT stuff or the help desk stuff while your actual team, which may also be the IR team, is working the incident response. So when you say seeking help from an ally, what does digital defense do in that respect?
Sure. So we are not an incident response organization.
Okay.
We are more preventative. And so
Okay.
we want to be your ally in cybersecurity. The digital defense team specifically, and the brand has a platform for vulnerability assessments and penetration testing, along with malware scanning. So we are kind of the cornerstone, the foundational services that an organization would want to engage in to
Mhm.
protect the network. We talked a lot about cyber hygiene kind of early on. These are the cyber hygiene type of activities that you should be conducting, regardless of the size of your network, whether you're 10 devices or 10 million devices, whatever that might be. You should be conducting scans on a regular basis. So this is what we do. This is where we focus. Our parent company, HelpSystems, has a suite of services in cybersecurity, whether it's automation, data security, data classification, or in this case, infrastructure protection that can help an organization regardless of where they are on their cybersecurity journey. If they are at cybersecurity maturity level 0 with nothing in place, we can assist you in getting
Okay.
started. And if you have a much more mature program that's working beyond the compliance piece, you've got a robust program in place, and you have resources that are conducting penetration testing internally. You're doing threat hunting internally. We have tools that can assist you throughout that process, from penetration testing to breach simulation and attack simulation as well, in addition to automation that can help minimize the resource requirements for a lot of that work. So that's
Very
just,
nice.
if you have questions, please feel free to email info@helpsystems.com, and one of our reps will reach out to you and talk to you about all of the different things that we have and services that we can provide to help an organization secure their network and build a better IT.
Cool. Okay. So I did a little OSINT on you, and I tend to do that to see who my guests are, especially when I don't reach out to them directly. And I
Mhm.
found out that you were a co-organizer and volunteer for B-Side San Antonio. Are you still? Is that still going on this
I
year?
am. Yes, this is my fourth or fifth year as a staff member for
Nice.
B-Side San Antonio. We're
I'm
very
going to this one
excited.
next
We're
weekend. So B-Side Seattle.
Yay!
So yeah.
Yes. Thank you for supporting the B-Sides community. That's awesome. Now, if you're unfamiliar with B-Sides, I hope everyone is familiar with B-Sides. There are, gosh, I think over 100 different, and I may have this number completely wrong, chapters worldwide to provide more local, um, localized cybersecurity and infosec type of conversations in community. So our event this year, we're back in action in person. We're very
Nice.
excited this year for June 18th. We're going to be at St. Mary's University here in San Antonio. We are offering a hybrid event this year. Last 2 years for us were virtual successfully. So we want to offer a hybrid event for folks to attend. You can register for both the in-person or the virtual only. Tickets are on sale right now through the end of the month. We've got some great tracks. I think our talks will be published on Monday. So if you're interested in seeing what we'll be presenting, that'll be up on our website on Monday.
Okay.
Online tickets are only $5. In-person tickets are 25 or 30 at the door. And it includes lunch. So we'll be feeding you as
Nice.
well.
Okay.
And a t-shirt. So I hope y'all are, if you're able to, please join us. We're very excited and look forward to an awesome event.
Okay. Yeah, and your CFP just closed. Looks like it
Yes.
closed 30 April. So that's fine.
Yeah.
You can check your status of your proposal there if you're a speaker, I'd imagine. So I love B-sides because they're a good way. You know, there are a ton of conferences out there, and it seems like everybody's like, oh, I go to Black Hat or I go to DEF CON, and those are prohibitively expensive for some people and require
Yes.
travel and hotel and what have you. The thing I love about B-sides, and I've gone to B-sides Seattle every pretty much every year they've had it, or that I've been able, except for the first year that I just moved up here. But I spoke at B-sides Springfield, Missouri. I went to B-sides Austin a couple times, and they're really great. And a lot of times you'll hear those same talks that were at DEF CON and Black Hat at these B-sides, or um,
Absolutely.
this is a 1 day event. I would have trouble flying from Seattle to San Antonio for a 1 day event, but some of the other ones are like 1 or 2 days is great. But these
Mhm.
are these are great for folks who are in the area who may not be able to get time off to go due to these things. So I love the idea of the
Absolutely.
B-side stuff, and yeah, it's very community driven. They your code of conduct is. Do you have the
We
code?
follow the
Oh, there it
Berlin
is.
Code
It's
of
up on top.
Conduct.
There it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
they have code of
it is.
conduct. Yeah, it's great. So,
So no, we're very excited, and very much to your point. Some of they're cost prohibitive to pretend. A lot of
right,
organizations, your company's not going to pay for you to go in many
right,
instances, and these are very local to you. It may be a day drive for a lot of individuals, so it's worth the
right.
time. And because of pandemic, um, we are offering that virtual option as well, because I know we're so excited with our 2 years of virtual. We were one of the first B-sides to go virtual during the pandemic,
Yep.
and had a fantastic turnout. We had over 600 people join us
Nice.
remotely in our first year. So, and this was globally too. So we had folks in the middle of the night across the globe joining us for our B-sides, and that was huge for us. So we were so excited to have that global presence. So we're offering that also this year with our hybrid event, so that folks that aren't ready to go in person or can't participate in person can still participate. So wherever you are, you can still join and participate in B-side San Antonio.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like the hybrid models because you can join. I mean, you're not going to get the same experience as being in person, and
Sure.
that's fair. But having the ability to get CISSP credits or what have you is very important. And maybe you just don't feel comfortable being out with folks. So I'm assuming y'all have a Discord or something that you'll use for the event, or how are you doing the
Yes.
virtual stuff?
Yeah, so we'll have each of the events. We have this year, because we're going back hybrid and kind of first year back in person, we're
Mhm.
reducing. We normally have 4 tracks. This year, we're going to have 3 tracks. So in
Okay.
each of the rooms, the in-person talks will be simulcast. We'll be using Zoom events. So you'll be able to log in, and then between the lobby, switch between each of the tracks to participate in whichever one you're interested in. We will probably also have a couple of remote presenters as well. Who won't be able to travel to us. So they'll be reversed. We'll be presenting that remote and simulcasting it in a room during the
Okay.
event as well. And then there will be a Discord channel that will be available for, to share, and kind of a lobby, if you will, to chat with other participants that are virtual, and also within each of the tracks and talks.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I had actually asked the B-side Seattle folks if they wanted to use our stream here to stream it out to Twitch
Mhm.
to get a larger group of folks. I think I was a little too late in that, but I've been trying to advertise our services here to be able to stream things out to B-sides or to other smaller conferences. Our InfoSec campout one that we're doing up here in August, we're going to do our best to try to stream that one. So I love I love that the technology has gotten so that anybody can do what Iron Geek was doing. I mean, Iron Geek, did things for years, being able to record these things and get them hosted up in channels and stuff. The technology and the tech level. Yes, stream on Twitch, please, Super Lolly says. We will do our best, Super Lolly. You have to remember it's an outside event at a campsite. I will be streaming via Tether on my 5G phone. So I'm going to be testing that. That's part of our thing for IEF. But yeah, so, Super Lolly, go and sign up for B-Sides San Antonio. Otherwise, I'm assuming you'll have the talks recorded as well.
The talks will be recorded, yes, and
Okay.
we typically will post them on our YouTube channel
Mhm.
the week after.
Okay.
So for those that we can record, those will be recorded and placed on our YouTube channel. So if you want to see what we've had available, the talks that have occurred in the past years, you can always go to our YouTube channel and check us out there.
Okay. Maybe. Oh, well, will you have a capture the flag or anything like that as well?
Um, our events team is working on something. Whether I don't have the exact list of events just yet, what we typically do have a capture the flag. I'm not sure if we're going to be including one this year. For the folks that are on that are in person, we always do a lock pick village, which is always a
Oh yeah,
popular event, learning how to pick locks.
Fox
Um,
Sport.
and we have a couple of other workshops going on as well. I know we have a malware workshop that's occurring
Mhm.
because I have to get tickets pulled together for that for our events team. But all of those activities will be posted within the next couple of days.
Excellent. Okay. Anybody in our stream chat have any other questions for Ming? Otherwise, I think we'll probably go.
Thank
I'm
you
going to
so
be.
much.
Yeah, no, I'm
Thank you so
so.
much, Brian.
Yeah, no problem. I'm so glad that we could able to get you on to talk about ransomware stuff, but I'm also glad we could talk about besides San Antonio, because I think it needs to be broadcast. So cool. All right, Ming.
Appreciate it.
So let's say people wanted to talk with you about ransomware stuff. How would they find you online? Are you on Twitter or
Um,
Mastodon or anything like that?
I am terrible about social media.
Well, that's okay. As the VP of product, I would be surprised if you didn't have somebody managing your social media accounts for you.
Yes, pretty much. I'm terrible about social, but you can always you can find me on LinkedIn. You can
Okay.
always send me an email as well. It's ming.lim@helpsystems.com. If you have any questions or want to connect, I'm happy to connect as well.
And that was part 2 of our discussion. If you found value, we definitely hope that you'll subscribe or support us on Patreon for the other 30 to 45 minutes worth of audio. And yeah, if you want to check out our 8 years of podcast, you can go to our website, www.breakingsecurity.com. You can also follow and subscribe to the BreakSec broadcast at twitch.tv/BreakSec. You can follow Brian Betcher on Twitter at BetcherPwned. You can follow Miss Berlin at InfoSister, INFOSYSTIR. You can follow me on Twitter and Mastodon. You can look me up on Twitter at Brian Break and also Brian Break on Mastodon.social. Thank you to our Patreon supporters and our server boosters on our Discord and our subscribers on Twitch. All of them contribute greatly to our continued success and just the time and effort it takes to put out a weekly broadcast, regular podcasts, and other content that we're working on. So thank you all so much for your help. We also thrive on word of mouth advertising, telling a friend, raising awareness of our podcast and broadcast at things like conferences or, hey, somebody's trying to find CISSP credits or something like that. So being able to tell a friend or leaving accolades on a 5-star accolades on a podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Google's, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, etc. All raise awareness of our podcast and broadcast so that others could potentially find it. So, and your word of mouth is an endorsement that we are doing a good job here to others, and it builds that trust. If you trust it, then they can trust it too, or they can feel comfortable trusting it. So thank you so much for that. And that was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Hope you have a great week. Hope that it was better than the last one. Hope that you take care of yourselves and your family and those around you. And remember to try to be human and to think about others. We don't always have the same life experiences or walk in the same shoes as everyone else. So it's something to remind ourselves that empathy is a thing that we should still continue to have, and that not only do we take care of others, but we take care of ourselves, because as we're fond of saying around here, you're the only you have. And we'll talk to you again soon.